Hi there. I wanted to give you a quick update on the Sunny Balwani trial. Closing arguments are done. The jury is going to be deliberating starting on Monday or Tuesday next week, and one juror has been excused. I'll get you up to date, so please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Please leave a comment or question. I want to know what your analysis is because this video is simply my analysis, my opinion, and it's it's for educational and information purposes only. Okay, so hi there, I'm Michele Hagan. I'm a legal analyst, former prosecutor. You may recognize me because I provided a lot of legal analysis on the Elizabeth Holmes case. It's Friday, it's been a long week and a crazy day. So Sunny Balwani faces the same 12 counts of wire fraud. So closing arguments are done. Rebuttal's been done by the prosecution. They have the last word. They get to argue last. They argue first and last because they have the burden of proof. Then the jury was instructed. The judge told them what the law says about wire fraud, what the burden of proof is, how to assess witness credibility, etc. Then they're going to come back next week and deliberate. We have 12 in the panel and one alternate. Okay, so in the 12, there are 5 men and 7 women. One of the panel of 12 was excused because of a scheduled vacation. So the judge excused that juror, I think it was juror number 10, and replaced him with one of the alternates. So we have one alternate left. All right, so let me get to closing argument. So as you know, as I've said, closing argument is not evidence. It's just what the attorney thinks the evidence shows. It's the attorney's argument for how the jury should consider the evidence. Okay, for instance, don't consider the missing database because you would be speculating. It's not in evidence. Okay, follow me on that. All right, so who goes first and who went first? Now, this was, I think, 3 or 4 days of closing argument. That's crazy. Okay, so government went first and they reminded the jury what the evidence is. Okay, so I want to keep this quick, so I'm just going to get to what the defense's closing was and some of the highlights from the government's rebuttal. Okay, so in closing arguments by the defense, Balwani's attorneys, they argued for, I think, over 3 days of closing arguments. That's long for this case, just in my opinion. Okay, and they said truth is fatal to the prosecution of Balwani. In other words, their evidence is truth and the government is not. And they said that the government presented an incomplete and an unfair case against Balwani. Incomplete and unfair. They said that Walgreens was a cheerleader for all the investors and the investors weren't fooled. And if you remember, 6 investor counts is Balwani's facing. 6 investor. 3 of them Elizabeth Holmes was convicted of. 3 the jury was undecided on. So the defense argued that Walgreens was the cheerleader and the investors, none of the investors were fooled, and they took a risk to get richer. And they also did what I call who's not here argument. What else could have been presented argument? So they brought up, why didn't the government call the DeVos family members? Why didn't they call the Theranos scientists? Why didn't they call other employees? Why didn't they call pharmaceutical executives? Why didn't they call research witness? Why didn't they call the board members? Why didn't they call Roger Parloff who wrote the Fortune magazine? So how would I handle that? I would say, well, in rebuttal, I would have said, the defense could have called them. They didn't. Okay. Then they also brought up, what was the evidence you didn't have, is what I call it. The defense argued they didn't play the investor call. Why didn't the government play the investor call? They didn't prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. And regarding the patient results, they explained it by saying, quote, it was an unfortunate couple of errors. Now, if you remember, 4 of the counts Balwani and Holmes Balwani's facing relate to patient counts. 3 of them individual patients, and the fourth count was the 1.2 million that was invested in Horizon Media to roll out that campaign in Arizona, all the ads promoting Theranos wellness centers. Okay, so they said it was an unfortunate couple of errors to, say that there was no error here it was just an error. It's not a big deal. So get rid of that count. Regarding the HIV count, they said it was not done on Theranos equipment. It was done on third party. Okay, I don't know how well that's going to go. They also said regarding the investor count regarding Alan Eisenman, I think it's count 3. I think he invested 99,000 in Theranos. They said that Balwani told him to sell his shares. Therefore, he didn't commit fraud. He told him to sell the shares. And they also said that all the investors are piling on. They're piling on Balwani because they're all claiming that they were all fooled. They were all fooled. Okay, what else did they say? They also, when they got to the investor, I think it was investor Grossman who was the witness who testified on the PFM. I can't remember, Health Sciences Fund, the $38 million that was invested in Theranos. I think it was Brian Grossman. I think the defense argued here. The defense argued that the investors should have known that the science was not complete, the technology wasn't complete, because Theranos had a large R&D budget. Okay, put aside the fact that there were claims made otherwise, but because the R&D budget was huge, therefore there was the investors should have known that the technology wasn't complete. Okay, regarding investor Mosley, which I think is count 9, he invested I think 6 million. His claims regarding being duped, if he was duped, why did he recommend his clients to invest in Theranos? Good point. And regarding investor DeVos, the RDK, I think it's count 7, the 99 million that was invested into Theranos. The defense argued that Lisa Peterson just said what she needed to say to look good. In other words, she lied. And they also, again, back to that, where are those people and how come you didn't hear from them? They also brought up, how come you didn't hear from anyone of the DeVos family? Rick didn't testify, Don or Doug didn't testify, if I have these names right. And they also brought up about the financials. Well, the investors, there was no amount of money entered into the line in the financials that relates to the DOD revenue. Therefore, the investors should have known. Okay, well, I don't know if the jury's going to buy that. All right, so what did the government do in rebuttal? The government said, trust your common sense, your eyes, your memory of the evidence, and convict on all 12 counts. All 12 counts. The defendants want you to focus on evidence not in the record, which is what I was pointing out. Why didn't they call this witness? Why didn't they play that? Where's the missing database? The government said the defense wants you to focus on evidence not in the record. Good point. Regarding for instance, the missing database. And they said to the jury, do not speculate, jury. You can't speculate. And it's true. The jury instruction tells you that. You can't speculate. And they asked the government asked the jury to look at the text messages, which I think are pretty incriminating. And I did plenty of videos. If you want to look at the text messages between Elizabeth Holmes and Sunny Balwani, just go to the playlist. You can take a look. Then that one in particular where he admits Sunny Balwani texts to Elizabeth, all the decisions were mine. I'm responsible for everything that happened, something to that effect. And the government also argued that Sunny Balwani had a lot of influence on Elizabeth Holmes. He was older and he had a lot of business experience, and they collaborated together, is what they said. They were a partner in every they were a partner in every sense of the word. Good point. The government claims that Balwani, when he claimed that the government said that Balwani claimed that Theranos would bring in $1 billion in revenues in 2015. They also claim that Balwani said that Theranos would bring in 140 million in revenues in 2014, when in reality, Theranos only made 130,000 in 2014 and 429,000 in 2015 and nothing thereafter. And they said that the investors couldn't fact check the claims. I mean, they weren't provided with some of the information. They couldn't check the claims. And even if they take risks, and I think this is a good point also, they're still entitled to accurate and truthful information, right? You can't just have somebody sign away fraud. You can't just lie to them and say, oh, it's your fault, right? Can you? Again, this is just my opinion. And they also did a good job here. They read a jury instruction to the jury, which I think is very effective, right? A lot of attorneys don't use the jury instructions, which completely baffles me. But if you show the jury instructions, you can show right here, jury, this is exactly what the law says. These are the rules you're supposed to follow. And there's one in jury instruction that the government pointed out, that the negligence of the victim is not a defense to fraud. So even if they didn't do their due diligence, it's not a defense to fraud. All right, and they also, government said the board of directors was a tool for Balwani and Elizabeth Holmes to carry out their fraud, and the business was an illusion built on a foundation of fraud. Nice job. They didn't profit, and the fact that Balwani didn't profit doesn't mean he didn't commit fraud. And again, there's a jury instruction exactly on that. You don't have to profit, okay? Which is what Elizabeth Holmes' attorneys argued as well. So the government asked the jury to be skeptical of Balwani's claims that he was innocent, basically duped. He was innocent because he invested in the stock. Balwani told scientists to use the non-Theranos devices. So what does that mean? That shows that he knew. Could be argued that he knew the Theranos devices were not reliable and accurate. And why did Balwani delete data? You know, those outlying data spots or points, data points? Because there are quality control failures. And there's a text, I think it's a text or an email, where Balwani says that the QC failures were beyond acceptable performance. So doesn't that mean that Balwani knew or should have known there were problems with the technology while Elizabeth was out there representing and he was representing allegedly otherwise? So they also brought up the point, the defense made that the people came forward, the whistleblowers came forward, the employees came forward because they wanted to be heroes. Well, the government said no. They spoke up. They spoke up and said what they saw. That there were serious accuracy and reliability problems with the technology. So, the jury has it now. The jury is going to be deliberating. There's no more evidence. That's it. The jury is going to make their decision based on the testimony and the evidence that they've seen over the last, 3 or 4 months of trial. And I think this is day, I don't know, I think day 31 or 32. So, jurors do take notes. And they rely on those notes and they talk amongst themselves and they decide how they're going to fill out that verdict form of those 12 counts. Whether they're going to find Sunny Balwani guilty or not guilty. Whether they're going to be undecided and come back hung on some of these counts. So we'll see. So if you're interested on potentially what Sunny Balwani could face as a sentence, I did a video on calculating the sentence for Elizabeth Holmes. So he's facing the same 12 counts. The amount of loss is the same, the 155 million, I think, total if he was convicted on everything. So I think he's looking at, I think it was generally 9 to 12 years in prison. Again, that's not looking at other mitigation factors or what the sentencing report recommends. We don't know. That's down the road. Elizabeth Holmes will be sentenced at this point. It's scheduled, I think, September 26th. And there's the sentencing report, I think, will come out in August, mid-August. So that's it. That's a wrap for me. So thank you very much for supporting my channel and subscribing. And please do subscribe if you haven't subscribed. And if you want to support my work in creating these videos, please, I put a PayPal link in the description box below the video. And thank you to all of you loyal supporters and your fabulous questions and your terrific analysis. Oh, and by the way, if you want to vote on what you think the verdict might be in the Balwani case, go to the community tab page and cast your vote. All right, so thank you very much for watching. Hit that like button, hit the bell notification button, and do leave a comment and do subscribe.